In this video, I'll share with you the top 10 best HTML tricks that not everyone knows when programming web applications, and of course, these are extremely effective tricks and tips for web programming and design. Here, I have a See Details button and detailed information content. I want it to only appear when the user clicks the See Details button. And it should be hidden when the user clicks the Close button. After hearing the problem statement, everyone probably immediately thinks of using JavaScript to solve the problem, but let's look at this. First, I'll replace the div tag, which contains the details, with the dialog tag. This is a default HTML tag used to mark extended content. However, on a website, we'll have many sections of extended content, so let's add an ID to name them. In the View Details button, use onClick to listen for the mouse click event. I'll then call the corresponding detail ID and instruct it to open the modal. See? It actually displays a model in the middle of the screen without needing to write any JavaScript or CSS. Next, I want the modal to close when the user clicks the Close button. So, for the Close button, I just need to handle the onClick event. Then, I call the dialog ID that I want to interact with, and add the Close event to request the dialog to hide. So, we've just created an incredibly impressive function that everyone thinks requires a combination of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Additionally, if you want to create a smoother modal display effect, add a few more lines of CSS. In the dialog, I added an animation called Show Modal whenever it appears. The purpose of this animation is to create a transition effect, set scale to create a gradually increasing size effect, and translate Y to make the model move from bottom to top. And that's how crazy coding will guide you in web design. In this example, I have a lot of content divided into lists. This example is used a lot in the question and answer section on websites. By default, I want the answer to only be displayed when the user clicks on a question. So, do we need to use JavaScript? Of course not, because this is a video about the top 10 best HTML tricks. I will replace the box tag, which contains all the content, with the details tag. This way, all the content is hidden, only the detail text is displayed on the screen. When clicked, the content is displayed. If you want to replace the default detail text displayed here with this class title, you just need to replace it with the HTML summary tag. So now, by default, the question in the summary tag will be displayed, and when the user clicks on it, the answer will appear. Of course, if you click again, the state will revert to the original. It's simple, right? I haven't even done anything other than changing the tag names. I'll also change the box tags below. As you can see, it works very smoothly. Also, if you want to hide the triangle in the summary tag, just go to CSS, declare the summary tag, and set none for list style. That's all. When working with forms in web programming, encountering requirements that restrict user input to a specific range is not uncommon. For example, here the requirement is to allow users to input values from 1 to 10. With the number input, we simply set it with a minimum and maximum value. By default, users cannot select values outside this range when clicking the increase or decrease buttons. However, if they enter values directly, they can. That's why, for these types of problems, programmers usually use JavaScript to more carefully check the current value instead of relying on the built-in HTML functionality. But if the requirement is just that, we have two ways. Way 1 is to use HTML select, with the option being a value from 1 to 10. Right? Clearly, the user can only choose one value from the options. The second method is to use HTML's range input, which is no different from number input. It also has a minimum and maximum value. However, it's much clearer and more optimized for UI/UX. Here's another problem with forms. For example, a form asks you to enter the language you're using. Theoretically, we only need a text input, right? But in terms of UI improvement, we should create predefined options to allow users to interact faster. So I'll try using the select attribute and filling in default option values. Indeed, users can now type faster with the predefined options. But what if the language they choose isn't listed? They can't type because it's not a text input. This is where we use the HTML datalist element. A datalist is a special HTML element that provides users with predefined suggestions, similar to the select element in a form. However, it doesn't force users to choose, it only offers suggestions. In the input text, I call the list by the ID of the corresponding data list. This way, whenever input is made, the options will be displayed for the user to select more quickly, but without forcing them to choose any of these options. Here's another example of working with forms in web design. The more form inputs there are, the more they need to be divided into separate groups for easier viewing and understanding by the user. For example, here I have two groups, basic information and supplementary information. HTML has attributes that are very suitable for this case. That's the field set element. Field set creates a border around the content you consider a group. And for the title of each group, I place it within the legend element. This way, the group title will be placed right in the middle of the border, creating a very visually appealing design. We've just seen the top 5 interesting HTML tricks and tips without JavaScript, and also without CSS if you don't have high customization requirements. Thank you all so much for taking the time to watch the video. The remaining top 5 will be broadcast in the next episode, promising to be much better than this first top 5. I hope to receive a like and subscribe to the channel so that it can grow. Thank you all very much.